Elections and Election Design Online Democracy Classroom. This is a great big experiment for us. The first time we're doing one of these democracy classrooms online. And so I hope you'll beg well, we have to beg you for your indulgence as we try and work through some of these things as we do them for the first time. But I think many of you looking at the names have been to one of our online democracy classrooms before. And the fundamental goal of our democracy classrooms, of course, is simply to practice democracy, which is the act of engaging, discussing, and talking about issues is a fundamental part of the practice of democracy, and it's really important, especially in parts of the world where simply talking about issues is widely frowned upon. So just some admin stuff. For the best experience, please use headphones or microphone, find a quiet room. If you want to appear on screen, you don't have to, find a room with good light. If you have any comments, questions, type them in the chat box. Please do put yourself on mute when you're not speaking. And of course, most important, be kind, be generous. These are stressful times for all of us. If you'd like to tweet about this, use the hashtag NNDemClass and do tag us at New Naratif. And if you've just arrived, I don't think anyone's just arrived, but if you have, please do check in at bit.ly/NNCheck-in. Okay, so if you have any questions, don't jump in, don't suddenly unmute your mic and jump in. Just type them in the chat window and I'll get to them. Okay. So how does this work? A democracy classroom, as it says there right on your screen, is all about engagement and conversation. And really the whole idea is for us to practice being fully engaged democratic citizens. So a democracy classroom isn't about coming up with solutions. It isn't about coming to a consensus. It is about practicing articulating your ideas, your beliefs, right? It's about practicing being a responsive and engaged citizen, talking about issues which are of crucial importance to all of us. So feel free to just talk out loud about the issue, whatever your thoughts are. They don't have to be fully formed. They don't really have to make sense. They just have to be honest. And all of you should engage with each other. What we like to do is, engage with each other in an environment of mutual respect. So remember that everything here is said in good faith. And remember that we are just, everything here should be about consent. If you want to quote someone, ask their permission. Normally in our real life events, we also say, if you want to take a photo of anything, make sure if anyone appears on it, ask their consent. Obviously, that wouldn't be an issue today, right? But again, it's an environment of mutual respect for us, a safe space for us to talk about sometimes very difficult issues which have no right or wrong answer. Okay, so the schedule, right? We're currently now in the sort of introduction phase. Usually in this bit, I ask everyone to really stand up and say something, but I think it's a bit impractical here to get everyone to say something about themselves. So I'll leave that for the breakout group discussion. Now, in a short while, right, we're going to break out into groups to discuss the issue based on question prompts. And a democracy classroom really is that simple. There's no like big hoo-ha and there's no big presentation, because it's all about hearing what you have to say, what your thoughts are about the issue. And hopefully you've managed to do some of the reading, right? And so, here we have someone else. Hello, welcome in. Please do check in. Oh, I saw Doriman has asked a question. Okay. I'll get back to you in a question, or Alfred rather. Yeah. So we're going to break out into groups, the groups of 4 or 5. Please appoint one person to be a rapporteur. So basically that person just takes notes about what you've said. And then after an hour, we all come back into this room where all of you, each rapporteur will have a chance to present what your group talked about. Now, we don't have a huge amount of people, thank goodness. So we'll have about 7 or 8 groups. So you'll get about 5 minutes each. So please do try and keep your findings succinct. Very often what we find is that there is also overlap between what people said. So you don't have to repeat what others said if you don't want to. And then we'll have a final discussion and a wrap up where anyone can speak. Okay, and then we're going to send you a feedback survey via email afterwards. So no worries. Okay. Okay, so before we get to this, let me just take a step back. Now, Alfred, you had a question, right, about what's the scope? Democracy, in Asia or the whole world? Democracy in Asia is very different from the West. Yeah, democracy is whatever you basically define it to be, right? This is, there are no strict definitions here, but rather if you want to engage with the idea of democracy and what it means and then how it's expressed through elections, feel free to articulate that point of view in your discussion group. Because from our perspective, democracy is really about what individuals think, right? It's bottom up. It's not a system. It's not a structure. Democracy is about shared values. It's about what people together, in a polity, get together and decide what is the best way to govern ourselves? What is the best way to ensure accountability and transparency? What is the best way to make sure our voices are heard? And every society has to decide that for themselves. What's the best way for minorities to be protected? What's the best way to quickly reach decisions and balance getting everyone's input versus speed, right? Every society has to decide that for themselves. So if you're going to engage in the idea of democracy as part of this question about elections, feel free to articulate that in your group and talk about how that then reflects the kind of elections, what you think elections should be, how they fit into democracy, and then the kind of elections you want to design. All right, does anyone else have any questions about anything about how this works, how we're going to run it? Feel free to put it in the chat room. I'll just finish up by saying a few words about New Naratif. New Naratif, many of you probably already know this, was founded 2017. We are a platform for art, journalism, research, and community organization in Southeast Asia. And what we really were founded to do was answer this question, which we hear a lot in Southeast Asia, which is, I'm a citizen and I want change, but what can I do? And so New Naratif aims to close that gap between reading something, finding information about something, and taking action. And one of the things we do a lot of is try to provide evidence-based, accessible information in Southeast Asian languages. So you'll see all of that on our website. But then we also want to close this gap. So say you read something online, what do you do afterwards, right? You share it on Facebook, you tweet, you retweet, but then what? So what we try to do is give people options to close that gap from reading something and learning about something and then taking action on it. And democracy classrooms are one way, very simple way of learning how to take action, because before you can go out there and talk about an issue or convince others or organize people to create change, you need to be able to articulate the issue, to talk about what the problems are, to think about them, and where better to talk about it with other people who are politically aware or who want to create positive change, who are citizens of your different countries. So this is a space that we've created for us to basically practice the act of democracy, which starts very much with engaging your fellow citizens. Question by Ahmad Siddiqui. Were there notes to read up on that I've missed out? There's a handout. Does everyone have the handout? Let me... okay, so the handout was when you signed up, there was a link to the handout, and then in the emails that you got, there was a handout. So Let me, Deborah, do you have the link to the handout handy? Drop it in the chat. Let me find the handout. Yes, there we go. So elections and electoral design. Thank you, Ru. A democracy classroom. So there are links there. There are ground rules. There are suggested reading materials, and you have your question prompts. Right. Okay. Oh, hello, Dora. Yes, please do sign in. Okay. So one last time, the link. Okay. All right. Any other questions? If not, we will have question prompts. These are the question prompts. So when you get into your small groups, right, have a chat with each other, introduce yourselves, and then you'll have an hour to talk about elections. What's the purpose of elections? What's the point of elections? How should elections be designed? And so on and so forth. Feel free to talk about all of the questions, none of the questions, right? It's really up to you. Don't feel like you have to stick to the script. We've had democracy classrooms where people spent the whole hour talking over one question, or even how to define, for example, the fake news one, people spend a whole hour just arguing over how to define fake news, whereas others just, rampage through the questions and answered all of them in an hour, and that's fine, it's all good. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the recording now. And then if there are any other questions that you want to ask which aren't in the, which you don't include on the recording, we can do that.